The single sacred mountain of Mount Celestia rises from an infinite sea of holy water to heights barely visible and utterly incomprehensible. The whole plain is the ideal model of justice, kindness, and order, of celestial grace and inhuman mercy, where the watchfulness of many eyes holds the rampart against evil. It's one of the few places on the plains where adventurers can let down their guard. Mount Celestia is the heavenly home of the best and brightest petitioners, the paradise that all other planners would conquer if they could. All petitioners are striving to reach their own goals, to perfect themselves and help others do the same. Mount Celestia is a promise too, a promise of betterment and ultimate union with the powers of goodness and law, for those that are worthy enough to climb the plains path through the 6 portals to the heavenly city and then into the illuminated heaven. For many others, Mount Celestia's path is too demanding. These archons stay lanterns forever, eventually fading and withering, or they wander away entirely or fling themselves as heroic sacrifices against invading fiends, modrons, or others. Their sacrifice is honored by the survivors, for even these deaths have their place on Mount Celestia, creating martyrs as examples of the order and majesty of the plain. Only the elect are permitted onto the heights of the mountain, for Mount Celestia is a plain of marvels that most creatures couldn't bear to look upon. If Mechanus is the home of the laws and machinery of the Great Ring, Mount Celestia is the guardian of its spirit. Today, we're going to talk about what one must do in order to climb the great heaven of Mount Celestia, but before we do that, let's talk about our sponsor today. This video is brought to you by Fables, a new subscription-based set of adventures made by Ghostfire Gaming. The format is simple. A fable is a full adventure, and by subscribing to it, you get a chapter of the adventure every single month. Each chapter is sizable, being about 80 pages long in PDF format, with tokens, maps, and everything that you would need in order to be able to play it. The first fable they are releasing is called The Citadel of the Unseen Sun, which is set in the lands of the Ostoyan Empire in the Grim Hollow setting, a land where the sun has disappeared and now vampires rule the place. The service starts on January, where the first chapter of this fable will be released, and if you sign up now for it, you will get a pretty sizable discount. It's like 30% or something. It's pretty huge if you sign up before January 1st. So check it out, give it a look. Ghostfire Gaming does amazing content and the art looks incredible, so go ahead and click the link in the description and check out Fables, The Citadel of the Unseen Sun. But now, back to the video. Actually reaching Mount Celestia is not too difficult, provided that you have the magic for it. You either use a spell like Plane Shift, assuming that you have the right tuning fork for it, or you use a spell like Astral Projection and then make your way through the astral and then into the upper plane. Or, I guess you could just die while being a lawful good person or venerating a specific lawful good god, but then, well, you would turn into a lantern archon, and where is the fun in that? There's more specific ways that one could enter this heaven, like for example using Mount Olympus or something like that, but that's beside the point. Normally when you enter Mount Celestia, you would be automatically dropped off in the sea. See, Mount Celestia is actually an island surrounded by the sea, and in that island there are multiple mountains, of which the center and biggest mountain is the actual Mount Celestia. And there are gods that have their own mountains around the perimeter of the island, like for example, it is believed that the trifecta of Torm, Tyr, and Ilmater, known as the Triad, each have their own mountain on the island that basically forms like their own individual plains. In any case, the water on the sea is actually holy water, like the whole thing is holy water, and you're automatically dropped off in the middle of that sea, so fiends that come into this plane typically have a really hard time invading the island. But more so than that, this actually shows you that this is not going to be a particularly pleasant journey into the mountain. We described it before in our previous video, but the process of entering Mount Celestia and then climbing it is not meant to be a particularly pleasant experience, because the idea is to test your spiritual power and then mold it into the ideal lawful good form. And so you are going to be tested, and complaining will yield no result. In fact, the opposite result. Now, generally, you're not going to drown unless you deserve it. If you can't swim, there's a very interesting race of aquatic creatures called the Soveri, which solely live here on the first layer of the mountain, who take great effort into making sure that people can make it to wherever they need to go. They're not necessarily mandated by anyone to do this. Remember, this is Mount Celestia. The creatures that live here tend to not just be good, but will tend to be self-determined to be good. In this realm, not actively doing good is almost as tantamount to doing bad, and so everyone has to go out of their way to strive for goodness. In any case, the sea itself is dotted with small little islands everywhere, each with fortifications, houses, mansions, and what have you. People sometimes just enjoy living here, and for good reason. It's kind of a nice place to live in if you're not a Lantern Archon, of course. See, Archons, the souls of the lawful good people that live here, are almost by design forced to attempt to perfect themselves, and so they must climb the mountain. But normal people, that being just like mortals who travel here manually, don't have to do that. They can enjoy the realm without necessarily feeling compelled to perfect themselves, though these people are generally, they're not respected within the societies of the mountain, as you can imagine. And because people can just chill here, you as an adventurer have to be careful because, hey, look, crime does exist here in heaven. Anyone can travel here, especially to Lunia, which is the first layer. See, the motto of those that live in the mountain is that anyone can atone and become good, no matter how bad you are. Like, literally devils could live here and they would be granted every courtesy as long as they're actually and genuinely trying to better themselves. So there are many evil people in here on Lunia hiding. Now, that being said, crime is obviously hilariously low, and the lore describes it as the sort of place where people would sleep with their house door open and stuff like that. Anyways, Lunia is unique among all the mountains, first because it is the lowest section, which means that there is the Sea of Holy Water and the harbor towns, but also because there is no sun in here. The sky of Lunia is perpetually night, with beautiful stars always resplendent. Now, Lunia, of course, marks the first place that you as an adventurer will be before you start progressing up. However, in order to try and go up the mountain, there are a few things that you need to be aware of. First of all, flying does not work. Gusts of air buffet you back if you try and fly, and even if you were good at avoiding them, it wouldn't do you any good anyhow. The mountain is technically infinite, and every layer is technically infinite. You can only actually go up the mountain if you find the right trail, but you can only find the right trail once you are spiritually ready to do so. See, looking up at the mountain, you would see big clouds that would bar your vision, clouds that also illuminate light, which would allow you to see. However, and this is kind of cool, it doesn't matter where on the realm you are or in which layer you are, if you look up, you will always be able to see the tip of the mountain, the 7th mountain of Mount Celestia. Though because it is so far and because it is like celestially illuminated, it'll just look like a tip that glows, so you won't be able to actually notice much of it. But it does kind of beckon you into it, which inspires people to want to climb the mountain. Now, second of all, magic does work a bit different here on this realm, and it typically does on most realms, to be fair. In Mount Celestia, any spell that encourages chaos, disruption, and evil are completely barred. For example, spells like Chaos Bolt would literally just not work. But this also applies to many spells that you might not realize. Things like Blur, Mislead, Confusion, Enervation, Mirror Image, those spells wouldn't work. Those spells are just chaotic and random, and this is a plane of law where things are just not random. Characters that rely on chaotic features like the Wild Magic Sorcerer or the Wild Magic Barbarian are tremendously hindered on this plane, as their magic either literally don't work or is severely hampered. Any conjured, lawful creature serves faithfully, and good creatures will do so willingly and without fail. Creatures that are evil or chaotic can only be summoned if given very specific magical keys, which generally are held by leaders within the mountain, but even so, they are difficult to control and restrain. So what that means is that unless you have the very express approval of a leader in Mount Celestia, you cannot summon demons. Now, any divination spell casted upon the mountain receives only true statements as, quote, falsehoods cannot survive the pure heights of the mountain, and so they fail, smothered by the purifying energies of the plane, end quote. Healing spells have twice the effective effect, but more interestingly, death spells, those being spells that insta-kill you, like for example Powered Word Kill, instead of killing you, they will instead grant you twice your stats, like they will double your HP, they will double your damage, and your armor class increases for some time. Now, being directly in the presence of the mountain also grants you certain benefits which are dependent on how high in the mountain you are. By simple virtue of being on the first layer, for example Lunia, you're granted a permanent bless spell and the protection from evil charm. Do note that in 5th edition, they made it so that protection from evil also includes protection from good in the text, but obviously you're not actually protected against good here, only against evil. Anyways, there are more improvements that you get as you go up the mountain, but we'll talk about that on our next video. But yeah, okay, so much to talk about. So, and now that you know how magic works here, we get to actually climb, right? Not quite. You don't just climb the mountain. You're supposed to become philosophically enlightened and then seek spiritual perfection. So, how the hell do you do that? Well, the way it works is generally you pick what is called a path. Because see, there are many ways into finding spiritual guidance, and of course, as you can imagine, everyone has their own way. There will be people in the mountain seeking students, like monastic institutions that might help you find your karma, or you might find an archon that would be willing to aid you. But that's the thing about Celestia, is that normally stopping your work in order to help somebody else normally would slow down your progression into getting anywhere, but not in Mount Celestia. Sometimes, stopping to help someone might literally speed up your journey to the top. Since, again, it is not a matter of distance, it is a matter of spiritual enlightenment, so there's tons of people that can help. It's actually encouraged. Quote, "The paths of Mount Celestia are both physical roads and trails and spiritual journeys to the heights of purity and wisdom in the illuminated heaven. Physically, even archons that can fly prefer to follow the roads closely, soaring above the pilgrims who toil up the slopes on foot. The spiritual paths have many different names among lantern archons from different places in the Prime. The Eightfold Path, the Five Virtues, and so on. Adventurers can call them whatever they want. The dark of it is, they all sound easy, but most of the lanterns don't stand a chance. Think about perfect, unblemished valor, mercy, humility, poverty, chastity, or charity. There ain't any easy paths. Archons choose paths the way others breathe. It comes to them natural-like. And it better because an Archon cannot advance to the higher layers of Mount Celestia and the higher forms of Archon without succeeding in one or more paths. It ain't quite so important to a planner, especially since a planner's path ends whenever she leaves Mount Celestia. When a planner cutter chooses a path, she swears great oaths to a patron power, undertakes a vigil and a fast, and offers a token sacrifice. Even then, she can only follow the path as long as she remains on Mount Celestia. Once a cutter chooses her path, she's obliged to stay on it until she reaches the next mountain, when she can choose a new path. Fortunately, planners don't have to choose paths, though those that do are protected by the Lantern Archons as one of their own. Those that don't had better fend for themselves." End quote. See, it goes back to what I was saying before. If you don't do things correctly, the Archons won't respect you and, might not protect you from bad things that can happen. And bad things, guys, can indeed happen. I know that we're talking about like philosophy and stuff, but you're still climbing a damn mountain. People die climbing mountains, okay? You can fall, there are avalanches, anything can actually happen. And if you're a mortal, dying is very serious, as you can imagine. Anyhow, some examples of paths that you can take are the Eightfold Path, which requires you to practice patience, pacifism, courage, joy, discipline, generosity, kindness, and teaching others. Then there's the path of Five Virtues, which requires for you to have complete honesty, charity, hope, moderation, and tolerance. Then there's the path of Valor, which only requires good deeds, but you can't speak about your good deeds. Others have to be able to speak of your good deeds for you. Now, those are kind of very generic, but some paths can be really tough. Like the path of Renunciation, which requires three things: constant charity for anyone who asks for it. It requires poverty, which basically means that you have to beg for meals and lodgings. Like you can't hunt or work for your meals. You literally have to force yourself to be poor and beg for every single thing. And the only thing that you're allowed to keep are one set of clothes. Everything else that you ever obtained, you have to give to somebody else as charity. And then the last requirement is mortification of the flesh, which basically means that you have to suffer in some way. Typically people, go for flagellation or fasting. Some decide to do this by swearing off sex or physical contact with others, while some do oaths of silence. Basically, the whole process just has to suck for you. But yeah, these are just a few examples of the paths that one might take in order to become enlightened and climb the mountain. Basically, once you become spiritually adept, the mountain trails will open to you and you will be able to climb. Then at the end of every individual trail, there should be a portal at the end, typically protected by a warden archon who makes sure that you're not doing any shenanigans or anything. Some might even request a duel or something along those lines to make sure that you're ready for ascendance, depending on the nature of the warden or depending on the path that you have taken. These types of literal tests are not too uncommon on the mountain, and you might have to pass through a few in order to go up. The most famous of all, of course, is the test that stops most of the applicants at the end of the fourth mountain. On our next video, we will talk about each of the individual mountains and what you can find in them, but I did wanted to talk about this one test in particular because it is quite notorious and it is directly linked, well, to the actual climbing process, which is the focus of this video, so I figured it would make the most sense to talk about it here. See, on the fourth mountain, the mountain that we call Celestia, it doesn't matter how enlightened you are or for how long you have been doing good, you will not pass through the fifth mountain. That is because a very peculiar test lies in wait. From the tallest portion of the fourth mountain, as far as you can climb, you're literally supposed to throw yourself off and free fall. Quote, "Virtue untested is merely innocence. Untempered iron can never become steel. Each journey is a journey unto death, but each death is a rebirth. Only through failure can one go on. As snow melts into the stream, and the stream flows to the rivers, and the rivers into the silver sea, so do lives flow into each other. From the sea to the clouds and back to the rain, all lives return. Life's cycle returns again and again until, after enough time, all spirits are released to rise beyond the vault of the heavens. The forgetfulness that erases pain is the greatest blessing of the merciful powers." End quote. This is the hardest of all tests, for you are supposed to relinquish your life to the mountain, to, in some ways, give up, almost as if understanding that you're insignificant in the grand scheme of things, the ultimate show of humility. Sometimes it is, as they say, virtue untested is merely innocence. I mean, you can preach all you want, but you must walk the walk. What value is your humility if you're not willing to give up your life for your cause? When you fall off the tallest portion of Celestia, instead of splatting onto the ground and die, you instead reach Ouroboros, an entirely airy place with no floor, a realm of lightness, relief, and utter bliss. Feathers floating through the realm as do flying creatures. This is the realm of a very powerful and ancient power, one likely much older than all of the other gods that reside within the mountain. In fact, it might be even older than the mountain itself, according to some legends. This is the realm of Jasirian, the god of the Quaddles, who, of course, according to some creation myths, was one of the two serpents who created the multiverse. If you're interested in that mythos, by the way, be sure to check out this video over here. There's some really crazy stuff in here that you'll probably enjoy. But anyhow, the realm itself is interesting because words are the ultimate tool of power here. This place is designed so that words are made flesh. The things that you say sort of just happen around you in real time, and magic that relies on speech becomes incredibly more potent. For example, a bard singing might summon angelic choirs around itself that will help. Verbally cursing a person might make the curse real. A person that casts a spell like Speak with Animals might become itself an animal that can speak with the other animal. It's pretty wild. From the moment that you arrive on this realm, you are trapped. In order to leave, there are two options. One option is that you can either accept or issue a challenge onto another pilgrim who is also trapped. Winning that challenge allows you to leave, though that won't quite let you pass Celestia into the fifth mountain. The other option is to meet with Jasirian and then answer his riddle. If you do, then you get to ascend. Quote, "The highest heights of the fourth layer of Mount Celestia are a barrier to many planner and petitioner pilgrims. Great numbers of them remain lantern or hound archons for years, serving in the smithies of the dwarf petitioners or searching for the gateway among the snowbound peaks and distant lonely valleys. Despite the searching, there seems to be no way to reach the gate to the fifth layer. Some sods fall into despair, but others always vanish, and that gives those left behind hope that they can find the gate as well. The portal to the next layer is a place that lies within each petitioner and can be reached from any mountaintop. Only after answering one of the riddles of Jasirian can a body progress to the fifth heaven." End quote. And there it is, the challenges and tasks of Mount Celestia. I hope that this gives you an idea of just how this all is supposed to work for those who attempt to reach the top of this mountain and how, difficult it can be. It can be a whole campaign, really. Now, our next video will actually focus on each individual mountain. We will cover each and every single one of them, including what you can find inside and, of course, every single bit of its eccentricities. I will do my best to put all the mountains into a single comprehensive video, but there's a lot of info, so hopefully I can make it happen. Thank you guys so much for watching. I would like to personally thank my patron supporters, Barry Maskant, 5e Magic Shop, Morgan Johnson, Rusty Rain, Dog Feeder, The Great Codini, Omega Scales, Terry Culp, Benjamin Bosters, Falky951, Ordoric, Sabim Kurshab, Solarensis, Thomas Hunt, Nathan McCum, Lost Crusaders, Stalia, Olaf Clapp, JD Green, Trev909, Tony Arcee, Famine52, George Watland, Sovereign Mind, Trevor Hest, Nato Rashura, The Living Guild Pack, Brian Camp, Chad Aga, John the Wicked, Shane and Sam Skinner, Steven, Streblo, Describe, Herbert Johnson, The Wizard's Vault, James the Perverted, Shoddycast, Horror Bound, Jesse Feliciano, Munchkin Mania, and Barrett for supporting me on Patreon at the $25 level. If you would like to support me as well, then please head on over to patreon.com/MrRex to support. Guys, thank you so much for watching. Thank you guys for being here. If you haven't checked out the PDF that I made, it's right below the video. It should be a nice little button with a dragon. Click on it. It'll take you to the thing I created. It's cool. But I'll see you guys next time.